North Korea says it has successfully test-fired an intercontinental ballistic missile. State-run media reported Tuesday, July 4th, the Hwasong-14 missile flew over 930 kilometers before landing in the Sea of Japan. If confirmed, it would mark North Korea's first successful test of an intercontinental ballistic missile. Television reports out of the north claim its missiles are now capable of hitting targets anywhere in the world. Tuesday's launch was conducted just days after South Korean President Moon Jae-in visited the White House, and just days before world leaders are to meet at the G20 summit in Germany. U.S. President Donald Trump reacted on Twitter, saying, quote, "Hard to believe that South Korea and Japan will put up with this much longer. Perhaps China will put a heavy move on North Korea and end this nonsense once and for all." This is just the latest in a long line of North Korean missile tests this year, all drawing international condemnation. For United News International, I'm Matt Paul.
Oregon has become the first state in the U.S. to allow residents who do not identify as male or female to mark their gender as non-specified when they apply for a driver's license, learner's permit, or identity card. The rule went into effect Monday. It comes after the mayor of Washington, D.C. said the district was the first jurisdiction to offer the option late last month. Oregon's Driver and Motor Vehicle Services said the new rule emerged after a judge last year allowed a Portland resident to legally change to non-binary gender.
Scenes from a Hollywood thriller playing out in Sri Lanka. The hunt is on to eradicate mosquitoes carrying dengue fever. An outbreak has followed last month's monsoon rains. Pools of water and piles of rubbish that weren't cleaned up have become breeding grounds for mosquitoes. But local authorities have sent out workers to wipe them out.
I think we have to intensify searching of house-to-house operations for the breeding places, and now we are doing fogging and spraying.
Symptoms of dengue fever include severe muscle and joint pain, high temperatures, severe headaches and a rash. The disease is transmitted when an infected mosquito bites a person. There's no treatment and patients must let the virus run its course. The outbreak in Sri Lanka has been particularly bad in one area.
We are doing it mainly because that in North Colombo area, we are getting much more patients with dengue infection. So we have to manage it somehow.
400 soldiers and police have been deployed onto the streets. They're helping identify and clean up mosquito breeding areas and educating residents on how to avoid getting the illness. But for the families of those who've died during this outbreak, the cleanup has come too late. Kim Vanel, TRT World.
Yemen is facing the largest cholera outbreak in the world. Almost 250,000 people have contracted the disease there since April, and one child every minute comes down with the disease.
The situation is extremely serious. What is unprecedented is the spread of this cholera epidemic.
Cholera wouldn't have spread so quickly if it wasn't for the war. A Saudi-led coalition intervened in Yemen to oust Houthi rebels in 2015. The war has destroyed most of Yemen's health infrastructure. 19 million people need humanitarian aid to survive, and many are on the verge of starvation.
Nearly 2 million children are too thin.
Yes.
Are very thin. They are just bones. And it's very difficult for them to survive and lead a good life.
Cholera is a contagious disease that causes diarrhea and can lead to death if untreated. Poor sanitation helps spread the disease, and clean water is necessary to prevent its spread. The World Health Organization has set up treatment centers across the country, but hasn't been enough to stop the epidemic. Yemen's rich neighbors have the resources to provide help, but they're busy dealing with their own diplomatic disputes. While in this poor Arab nation, the cholera outbreak shows no sign of slowing down. Rahul Radhakrishnan, TRT World.
With gun violence on the rise in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, the availability of an application that tracks in real-time gun battles has shown effective based on its many eyewitnesses, media, and police accounts. The Fogo Cruzado, or Crossfire application created by Amnesty International, aims to let Rio citizens know where gunfire is taking place in the hopes of keeping them out of danger. The number of people killed by police in shootouts during the first 5 months of this year has jumped to nearly 50%. The free app hopes to alert many citizens near violent areas and save lives.
China has launched the first of a new class of guided missile destroyer, touted as the largest and latest in naval technology. Known as the Type 55, the warship entered the water at a Shanghai shipyard on June 28th, according to a statement from China's Ministry of National Defense. The Chinese government lauded the new ship as a big step forward for the country's naval technology, saying that, quote, the launch of this ship signifies that our nation's development of destroyers has reached a new stage. China's defense ministry listed the ship's displacement at 10,000 tons, but remained tight-lipped on other details. However, satellite imagery of the ship suggests that it's roughly 180 meters long, with a beam of approximately 20 meters. The Type 55 comes as part of China's plan to expand its navy to as many as 351 warships, submarines, and logistics vessels by 2020. For United News International from Washington, D.C., I'm Caitlin Mangum. China has accused the United States of a serious political and military provocation after an American warship sailed close to a disputed island in the South China Sea. On July 2nd, the USS Stetham, a guided missile destroyer, reportedly sailed within 12 nautical miles of Triton Island. Triton Island, part of the Paracel Islands archipelago, is claimed by China as well as Taiwan and Vietnam. The U.S. does not recognize Beijing's claim of sovereignty over the islands and has repeatedly warned China against its occupation and reclamation of islands in disputed waters. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs accused the U.S. of making an unauthorized entry into China's territorial waters and said it responded by sending battleships and fighter jets to the area. It marks the second freedom of navigation exercise conducted during the Trump administration. For United News International from Washington, D.C., I'm Caitlin Mangum.
It appears that in the upcoming weeks, Russia plans to deploy the military to patrol the borders of the planned de-escalation zones in Syria. On Tuesday, Alexander Lavrentiev, a Russian negotiator, told reporters that when the agreement with Turkey and Iran is finalized, Moscow and its allies will be mapping conditions relating to the Idlib and southern zones. The borders in the Homs province and Damascus area have already been agreed on. Lavrentiev said overall the agreement provides for the presence of Russian military police in the buffer zones, but once again this matter has not been agreed yet. He continued, depending on when the documents on safe zones are signed, I think one should expect concrete measures on the deployment of forces within 2 to 3 weeks.
Over the last month there have been clashes between the military and Daesh-linked militants in Marawi. Thousands of people have been displaced by the fighting. Well, Noel Tarazona has been following the story for us in the Philippines, and he joins me now. What is the significance of this decision, Noel?
Yes, John, the armed forces of the Philippines earlier appealed to the Maute militant group for the last time that, given with the martial law validity, they have to surrender or they will die in the battlefield. There are dozens of suspects have already been arrested without warrant of arrest. And with the recent decision of the Supreme Court, this will mean that the arrest of rebellion suspects will continue even in the absence of an arrest warrant issued by the court. Now, with this development, security forces are now empowered to continue arresting suspects and parties of interest as a means to suppress rebellion or terror in the Philippines. Philippine Rodrigo Duterte earlier said that unless the military and police would advise him that it is already safe, then the martial law will continue. The martial law is expected to last until July 24, but under the Philippine laws, the president has the power to extend outside Mindanao if public security warrants it.
And what's the likely reaction going to be from the rebel groups who are fighting the government forces?
Yes, John. Actually, many are looking forward to the reaction of the Maute militant group. But as you know, the Armed Forces of the Philippines held a press conference this morning, and they said that the Maute militant groups have already lost their group's command responsibility, and they have some of them have serious disagreements within the ranks. So with this development, the military is taking advantage of the situation to end the armed conflict the soonest possible time. The Maute militant group will be expecting that some of their relatives and colleagues will be arrested by security authorities to investigate their links with the armed militants in Marawi. In fact, even before the Supreme Court upheld the legality of the declaration of martial law in Mindanao, some members of the Maute clan have already been arrested, and that includes the Maute Patriarch Kayamora Maute and Maute Matriarch Omintaro Mate Maute. Now, with this development, more arrests are expected to come, especially in different parts of Mindanao, where some suspected members of Maute group are believed to be in hiding.
North Korea appeared to use a Chinese truck originally sold for hauling timber to transport and erect a ballistic missile that was successfully launched on Tuesday, highlighting the challenge of enforcing sanctions to curb its weapons program. North Korea state television showed a large truck painted in military camouflage carrying the missile. It was identical to one a UN sanctions panel has said was most likely converted from a Chinese timber truck. Since 2006, UN sanctions have banned the shipment of military hardware to North Korea, but control of equipment and vehicles that have dual use, military and civilian applications, has been far less stringent. The vehicle was imported from China and declared for civilian use by the North Korean Foreign Ministry, according to a 2013 report by the UN panel. Tuesday's launch was the first time the truck had been seen in a military field operation in pictures published in state media.
Severe flooding has killed dozens of people in southern China, and the death toll may continue to rise as many are still missing. China's Ministry of Civil Affairs said Tuesday, July 4th, that 56 people have died since heavy rain started pounding the country 5 days ago. Meanwhile, 22 people are still missing. The flooding, which has been concentrated in 11 provinces, has destroyed around 27,000 homes and damaged 37,000. The severe weather has also disrupted transportation, with several flights grounded and trains halted. Xinhua News Agency reports direct economic losses of more than $3.7 billion. On Monday, China's Ministry of Finance allocated $277 million in disaster relief funds. On Tuesday, the National Weather Observatory suspended a rainstorm alert. However, rain is still in the forecast for the southern part of the country. For United News International, I'm Neela Uni.
Reuters has reported that top security officials warning on Tuesday that Germany should brace for further attacks given growing numbers of potential Islamist militants. Officials vowing to step up efforts to prosecute, convict, and deport suspects. Germany was hit by 5 Islamist attacks in 2016, including a December attack on a Berlin Christmas market that killed 12 people, while an additional 7 attacks failed or were thwarted. Citing growing evidence and over 1,000 expressions of concern from the general public about growing risks, Hans-Georg Maaßen, president of Germany's BFV, Domestic Intelligence Agency, told reporters, "We must expect further attacks by individuals or terror groups."
CNN has reported that Narendra Modi has become the first Indian prime minister to visit Israel, arriving in Tel Aviv on Tuesday as part of a 3-day visit to mark 25 years of diplomatic relations between the two nations. Commenting on social media ahead of his departure, Modi said he was looking forward to holding extensive talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, whom he called, quote, "my friend," who shares a commitment for vibrant India-Israel ties, end quote. Modi added, "From boosting economic ties to furthering people-to-people interactions, my Israel visit has a wide range of programs."
A commander said Iraqi forces slowed their advance on Tuesday through the last streets in Mosul controlled by Islamic State, where militants and civilians are packed in densely together. While Iraqi commanders predicted final victory in Mosul this week, U.S.-backed Syrian Democratic Forces announced they'd begun an assault on Islamic State's Syrian redoubt in the old city of Raqqa. The Iraqi military has pushed insurgents into a shrinking rectangle no more than 300 by 500 meters beside the Tigris River in Mosul, but the resistance has been fierce. The Rapid Response Division, an elite interior ministry unit, called in airstrikes just 50 meters away from their targets, and the fighting got close enough at one point for the militants to toss a grenade at the troops.
The British Prime Minister visited Saudi Arabia in April to boost the UK's post-Brexit trade ties. Britain sells billions of dollars worth of arms to the country. Weapons human rights groups claim are killing civilians in Yemen under the Saudi-led bombing campaign. Theresa May said the long-standing relationship with oil-rich Saudi is in Britain's national interest.
I can assure my honourable friend that...
But in a bid to protect these interests, has the Prime Minister deliberately stifled a report critical of Saudi relating to its alleged funding of so-called terrorist groups operating in the UK. The investigation was launched in 2015 under the former Prime Minister David Cameron. 18 months on and the report's yet to be published. Opposition parties are demanding answers.
The first job of a government is to keep its people safe. If there are people, no matter how lucrative the business deals you might be doing with them or their country, who are funding those who would murder our children and innocent people, then it is security that comes first. It will be an absolute crime against the people of this country for Theresa May to continue sitting on this report.
We asked Britain's Interior Ministry, the Home Office, for comment, and they responded with this written statement. They said the review has improved the government's understanding of the nature, scale and sources of funding for Islamist extremism in the UK. Ministers are now said to be considering advice over what can and can't be published in due course.
Now, there are serious questions which have to be asked, and if Saudi Arabia is involved in any way in either exporting terrorism or willingly ignoring terror which is being funded from Saudi Arabia, then of course hard questions need to be asked, not just about the conduct of Saudi Arabia, but about the nature of the relationship with Saudi Arabia.
Oh my God! The attacks in Manchester and London have added pressure on the government to reveal their findings. ISIL said its fighters carried out all 3 attacks. A government spokesman told Al Jazeera that Saudi Arabia is not the main focus of the report, nor has the delay in releasing the report anything to do with sensitivity surrounding Saudi. But while the report remains private, many continue to question whether Britain's trade ties have been put before national security. Neve Barker, Al Jazeera, London.
Ellos, los mareños, le llaman la princesa. Entonces yo soy ahorita el papel que juego es ser el esposo de esa princesa.
According to a U.S. official, U.S. military analysts believe North Korea launched a probable 2-stage intercontinental ballistic missile on Tuesday. The U.S.'s preliminary analysis shows the North Koreans launching an intermediate, a single-stage KN-17 missile. The continuing assessment proposed a second-stage booster ignited and had 30 seconds of added flight. The missile flew over 550 miles before coming down west of Japan. U.S. military technical experts are reviewing all data and intelligence gathered by U.S. satellites, aircraft, and other systems to determine if the missile was truly fired.